Whether your team is your family, your business, or your employees, staying connected is crucial. You can depend on the Cross Insurance family
Very good.
to provide the best insurance solutions for you. We've got your team protected. Visit crossagency.com today.
Hello, everybody. Welcome, welcome, welcome. I'm Janae Osterhill, Boston Globe culture columnist and creator of A Beautiful Resistance. And I'm so excited to be in conversation today with the iconic Lisa Simmons, founder of the Roxbury Film Festival in its 24th year, and producer Michael Dennis. Today, we are going to be having an amazing conversation about savages, servants, and specialty acts and what it means to have Black representation on the big screen. Thank you, everyone. Lisa, Mike, go ahead and camera on. Unmute yourselves. How are you today?
Oh,
Loving it. Loving it. Thank you. I wish I could be where you are, but I'm glad. Thank God for technology, right?
Right. Thank God for technology. We can all be in community with one another today. I want to remind the audience that you can submit questions and answers in the chat box, and we will get to them. First off, Mike, I would love to talk to you about what inspired this film.
Well, this Savages, Servants, and Specialty Acts is sort of an extension of a series of movies that I've been doing the past, I think since 2014, with a gentleman by the name of Charles Woods, who's a film historian and film collector archivist based out of New York City. And, you know, like I said, this is one in a series of ones, but this is the first one that we've not made available on YouTube. So on YouTube, Charles has over 500,000 views with his content. And we wanted to do things specifically for festivals, specifically to spark discussion. It's one thing to have the numbers of views and say, oh, wow, it's out there, but we don't know how people are responding. And we really want to have conversations around these topics. So this is the first one that we made available to festivals. And then the second one, which is the significance of Sidney Poitier, will actually be screening at the Roxbury Festival this year. We're really excited about that.
That's really exciting. As I watched the film, I kept thinking about James Baldwin and James Baldwin's quote, it comes as a great shock to discover that the flag to which you have pledged allegiance has not pledged allegiance to you. It comes as a great shock to see Gary Cooper killing off the Indians. And although you're rooting for Gary Cooper, the Indians are you. And it really made me think about the propaganda that has always been in place to kind of uphold white supremacy, and why spaces like what Lisa has created with the Roxbury Film Festival are so vital to how we see ourselves in the content we're able to access and create. Lisa, can you talk a little bit about the Roxbury Film Festival and why you created it and why it's necessary when it comes to representation?
sure. Yeah, it's so important, right? I mean, these films that are at Rox, you're not going to see anywhere else. And they are films that are really telling a narrative that has been lost in history and storytelling and everything. And so we need folks like Mike and Charles to be bringing that history forward constantly. And it's not something that's like a one-off and you need to see this particular film, you're going to see this one time. You have to keep producing it. It's just like you producing this show. You know what I mean? It's like we have to constantly be reminded, like, oh, right, like, this isn't the way it should be. And it's true when you look at the history of film, the history of Black people in film, since the beginning of time, there's always been this issue around let's continue to make sure that white supremacy lives, that let's continue to make sure that these images that we want the world to see are the images that they're expected to see and not the other. So, Roxbury International Film Festival started because of that, because filmmakers were not getting into other festivals because they weren't making the content that mainstream media wanted. They were making love stories and they were making experimental films. Who has Black people in experimental films? Well, we do, because we're not a monolith. So it's really important, right, to have these spaces and places where we can share these visions, these voices, work with a wider audience.
As you can see, Peppermint Patty has joined the chat. Mike, I was really excited to see the clip where Paul Mooney is talking about the doll test, the 1940s doll test, where Kenneth and Mamie Clark used for Brown v. Board, and how, for those of you who don't know, this test has been recreated multiple times, and unfortunately, the results are often always the same. Black and white kids alike choose the white doll as the beautiful doll, the best doll, the good doll, the valuable doll, and the Black doll is the bad doll, the ugly doll, the undesirable doll. And it really shows how representation affects how we see ourselves, and how it's always affected how we see ourselves in film and pictures. What is made visual is so powerful. I mean, Frederick Douglass knew this. He was the most photographed man of the 19th century by design, because he understood the power in portraiture. Yes, Peppermint Patty, Frederick Douglass knew. But Mike, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about that power and why it's important that we use it the right way, and why we call it out when it's used the wrong way.
Absolutely. Well, that's really the mission of Real Black, my company, is to educate, entertain, enlighten, and empower through the magic of film. You know, Hollywood does such a great job on us, doesn't it? Where we don't really realize that we're being programmed to think or believe certain things because the entertainment is so well done, you know. And now, you know, one of the earlier projects I did, and we showed it at Roxbury, was called Black Film Now, you know, so that was about 10 years ago, where we were talking about the wave of new filmmakers, the Ava DuVernays, the Ryan Cooglers of the world, that were now getting entree into controlling the way we get to tell our stories. And now, you know, I think a lot of the work that we do is to try to get people to feel responsible, ethically, morally, within their creativity, to not do us a disservice when they tell stories. So I think part of what Charles and I do is about pulling the sheet off of this stuff and making it plain to your eyes. You know, it's one thing for you to have this feeling that there's a trope that exists, but we unveil them, and we examine them in ways that provide a historical context as well. You know, so that's what Savage is about. But yeah, the doll test is real, and that clip with Paul Mooney, that was one of the impetuses for me to take a greater responsibility to trying to tell my stories better. I'm not saying tell better stories, but tell my stories better, so that we don't fall for the okie doke. You know what I mean?
Lisa, can you talk about how that kind of mission goes into how you curate the festival?
Yeah, I mean, I was just going to say it is so important that it's not just the filmmakers making the films, it's the audience members coming to watch them. And I think one of the amazing things, when we started this film festival 24 years ago, you know, it was sort of like, who's going to come? This is going to be great for the filmmakers. We really want to do it for the filmmakers. What we didn't realize is that the audience members needed it just as much, right? That they needed to understand that what they were seeing, well, you know, who said it? Anna Devere Smith said, the more you're called something more, the more you believe that that's who you are, right? So the more that you see these images, the more you think, well, that's who I am, but that's not who I am. But who am I then? If this is what media says I am, and I don't fit there, then where do I fit in? And so I think, you know, absolutely, I think that it's really, really important that young Black filmmakers see other filmmakers, other, more experienced filmmakers, that you're going to see, you're going to see people doing this work, and you're going to say to yourself, well, I can do that. I have a story. In my family, it really gets people to start thinking about who's in my family. Who should I didn't know my grandfather, fought in this war. I didn't know that, that my great-great-grandmother was a slave, and then this is what happened. Let's unearth those stories. Let's unearth this. And that, to me, over the last 24 years has been amazing to see, these stories come forth, that filmmakers really thinking about their responsibility, as Mike's saying, in making films, and having an impact, and really having audiences walk away saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know that. I was just educated. I was entertained, but I also was so educated. And I think, we have to continue to do that. We have to continue to do that. And now that filmmaking has become, easier to do, it's cheaper. You can do it on your phone. Like we're constantly telling people, grab the phone, interview somebody, get that story, because, that's who we are. We're storytellers. And we need to continue that conversation with our elders and with the people that are around us. It's really important not to lose those stories.
Right. And might I add, one of the things that I appreciate, I've been screening work at Roxbury, gosh, I don't know, like 20 years, maybe 15, at least 15. When was Billy D. Williams and Marla Gibbs there? 2007?
Yeah, I think you're right.
That was my first Roxbury, and it was life altering, because not, like Lisa has in person the people that are my heroes. And she sets up filmmaker lunches and brunches and lots of opportunities to interact not only with the legendary artists that are there, but the up and coming filmmakers. And I can honestly say that just being a part of Roxbury, I've maintained relationships with so many filmmakers and people that I've met. Ralph Celestin is somebody that comes to mind, who's in Boston. I mean, Boston has such a great filmmaking community. Just to have access to that through Roxbury is amazing.
One of the things that is so important to me that Charles brings up is the idea of criticism. And as a film historian, his knowledge is so deep. His canon is so loaded with kind of just the archive of Black people on film and what it's meant to us and what it's meant to society at large. And there's this big conversation that is continually happening in our community about Black criticism and what it means to critique. Like I remember somebody got dragged for critiquing Beyonce and for critiquing Issa Rae, but it's criticism serves a function. Can you talk a little bit about why it's important that we have Black critics and historians and archivists who can speak to things through a critical lens?
Good question. Well, I always looked at criticism as being part of a diamond or triangle, right? You have the art at the top. Then for it to improve, you have to have a critic as well as the studio or the distributor, the marketing, right? And if any of those are off, then the product suffers, because now filmmakers are just making things for commercial value. And I think that we suffer as Black artists, trying to work within the system, let's say, because we're always dictated to, or it seems to be that we're always dictated to what is going to sell is what gets made. It's only when somebody goes outside of that and says, no, I really believe in this, and they make a movie like Get Out, or Django or something like that, and that breaks the paradigm, and then all of a sudden there's a rush to see more of things like that. But before that, the common belief is that, oh, it won't sell unless it's music, it won't sell unless it's comedy, and that's not necessarily true, especially now when the audiences for films are so segmented and fragmented, that it's almost like a laser beam focus on audience today. But No, without Charles, I would not be the filmmaker that I am. You know, I would not be and I know, like I said, you know, his influence in social media has really influenced a lot of other people's belief systems in terms of the kind of stories that they want to tell. But I wish there were more critics out there that were, you know, that just had their BS detectors a little more fine-tuned, and then maybe we'd start to see better work, I would hope. But I don't, you know, but again, we're talking about you know, Charles's main premise with his technology is that all film is designed as propaganda and exists to reinforce the status quo. You know, so now we as members of the oppressed have to make work that speaks against that, or speaks out towards that, or at least addresses it. So that's our mission. I can't say it's every film critic's mission to do that. You know, but I also think that we exist in a time period where everybody's a critic and everybody feels entitled to their opinion, and not everybody makes sense with their perspectives. So I'm really happy to be mano a mano with Charles, because he's the real deal.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's incredibly important to have more Black critics, have more critics of color. I think, you know, there are nuances in certain films, and especially films like these independent films, but even films like Get Out and things like that, that really speak to the Black experience. That, you know, I would love to see more Black critics. I think it's really important to have that voice, you know, regardless. And I do think it's important to be critiqued. I do think it's important for filmmakers to be able to talk about their work and be challenged on their work, just like any other art form. But that to have like-minded folks in the room that are helping, you know, have that conversation, I think is really, really important.
And to shine light on work that otherwise wouldn't be seen. I mean, I came up at a time when Siskel and Ebert was the most popular film critics in the world, and their thumb up value would be enough to keep a movie in theaters that extra week, you know, or to have it re-examined for Oscar potential. We don't have that anymore. It just doesn't exist. The closest thing, if you're within a certain circle, might be Tombe Obenson, who's founded ShadowandAct.com and writes for IndieWire. I think he gets it, but too often, I think a lot of the online critics are looking for clickbait, and it's a distraction. But if there's a critic that really understands the history of it, where they understand that part of their job is to shine light on work that otherwise would go by the wayside.
Yeah.
When Charles said something towards the end of the film that I thought was really important about defining the Black aesthetic, because when we're talking about Black critics and Black criticism, there has to be an understanding of what the Black aesthetic is and what we collectively as a community are talking about when we say the Black aesthetic. So I wanted to definitely get your insight, each of you, on what the Black aesthetic is. What does it look like?
Lisa, you want to go first?
I was going to say, Mike, you start that.
Well, I mean, there's a belief system that if we could achieve what in film, what we've been able to do in sports and in music and all these other places where we had segregation and a period of gestation that existed, where we had to improvise, that would connotate what a Black aesthetic would be. You know, Charles is very pessimistic in terms of the potential for mainstream cinema to address some of the issues that affect Black people specifically. And I still fight to believe that one or two pieces of work can shift the whole thing. But, you know, basically the Black aesthetic is, you know, questioning. I don't know, we talked to Arthur Jafa about it, you know, sort of like, you know, if everybody is sort of aligned with this idea that we could challenge ourselves to get Black film expression to reflect our truths, we'll start to see work that can transform the whole medium. But again, we exist in it's a very expensive, it's not as expensive anymore, but it's an expensive medium, and it's dictated by the suits at this point. So if we do see things like that, I think it's going to happen outside of the system, not within it.
I agree. I do think it is somewhat controlled, but I think that control is being clawed back. And I think that, the more that filmmakers and Black filmmakers are entering the marketplace, and self-distribution is an opportunity and not a barrier. There are so many distribution companies that are looking to support, Black film. And I do think, we are a media nation. We get all of our stories in media, whether it's news, whether it's YouTube, whether it's Instagram, Insta stories. The written word is going by the wayside, and the way that people are making an impact and making their voices heard, is through media, whatever form of media, and film is a huge part of that. I think that, like art and poetry and literature, and has always had that place in Black America, and in Black identity, and film is right there with it, telling the history of who we are, the future of who we are to become, and really pushing the boundaries, I think, of saying we are not a monolith. I know I said that before, but really pushing that boundary, and filmmakers understanding the way to really light Black bodies and bring out that beautiful aesthetic of who we are. So I look at these filmmakers that we have in the festival. Each year I'm just so amazed by the work that's being created, and the stories that are being told, and the quality of filmmaking that's happening, and the awards that they're winning. And it makes me so incredibly happy. I feel really proud and humbled to share their work, and to meet them, and to be part of their journey, because it's all of our journey. I mean, the stories that they're telling are so much a part of all of our journey. So, I do think that people are starting to use film to sort of uplift who we are, to sort of put down white supremacy and appeasing to white folks. And I think that, it's only going to move forward that way.
Right. Well, yeah, I can't make blanket statements in 2022, because it's just every second as we speak, 50 Black movies just came out.
I know.
So I can't make a blanket statement. I will say that I have enjoyed, and I feel like Donald Glover gets it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Atlanta was amazing this season.
Atlanta, I think Donald Glover gets it. I thought that the music videos that accompanied the Story of OJ project that Jay-Z did, pushed it to challenge the status quo, at least question it. The Story of OJ cartoon created a lot of controversy. The Black Friends music, where they envisioned Friends as being cast, and then at the end, Little Earl says, "Who asked for this? Why? Who said that we need Friends with an all Black cast?" And I think that challenge is right there. Like, if we have the power to make work, should we be emulating what the dominant culture has already designed for us to be entertained by, or should we be making work that challenges and entertains ourselves as a people? And I think that the audience is large enough that you can market directly to Black people and still come out of it ahead.
Well, and Friends emulated us.
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Friends literally stole its premise from Living Single. So
that's
there's
factual.
that.
That's factual.
And I just have to say, the written word is still strong in here.
Oh yeah,
Every film starts with the written word, but I'm glad you brought up Donald Glover, because Atlanta has been heavy on my mind this season. He did a lot of standalone episodes, but every single episode of this season tackled the white gaze and how the white gaze washes over us, how it affects that. Like, every single storyline went, if you peeled back all the layers like an onion, was about fighting the white gaze.
Right.
And when I was watching Savages, it really made me think about how the white gaze is washed all over everybody, all of us, how we see ourselves, how we see each other, how we see other folks of color. It's in how we do everything. And it's always, you know, Toni Morrison talked about this a lot, like removing the white gaze, removing the white lens. And we're in the middle of a fight right now in our country. You know, we just celebrated Juneteenth, but schools can't teach about Juneteenth. Like there, you know, we're in a situation where we're actively fighting to protect the truth and to tell the real story of American history. So when I'm thinking about the canon and all the work that Charles is doing to document the archives and what we need to be taught in the learning and unlearning that needs to be done, I can't help but think about the fight against critical race theory and what's being banned in schools. Mm-hmm. And like, would a film teacher even be able to teach what Charles is trying to teach? You know, would we even be able to have these discussions in public schools and spaces? And that's something I've been thinking about a lot with this film, is like how we move to tell these stories and to teach young filmmakers and writers, I mean, just artists, period, because all of this stuff affects how we express ourselves. Like, how do we protect these truths? How do we protect history when we're actively fighting legislation that's working to oppress it?
Well, speak truth to power. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Lisa, you're about to go.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Mike.
No, I think it's important to speak truth to power. And Charles, he does not bite his tongue. And he's empowered by the fact that he lived through even more oppressive time, you know, when there were no images whatsoever of Black people other than savages, servants, and specialty acts. And I think it's and he's got that perspective where he can not only talk to you about what it was like growing up, but also use the film to show you exactly how we got to where we are today in terms of this level of brainwashing that exists with us, you know. And I don't know if it's in the film. It's been a while since I've seen Savages, but, you know, Haile Garima, he talks about the nature of white supremacy. It's on YouTube. It's on one of our YouTube videos, but we exist within their alphabet. And it's not until we redefine ourselves so that we don't normalize white as being, I mean, even like, you know, in the technical term, like if you want to get the proper color on your screen, you're asked to white balance, you know, so it exists within the nature of the language to such a strong point that it takes a very strong mind or concerted effort to break free of that mental chain. But I think the more people are aware of it, you know, let's say it's sort of like if we're all sitting down right now and we have pizza and we're not talking about it, but then all of a sudden say, doesn't this taste a little funny? Doesn't this taste a little different than it usually does? And then the next one, yeah, you're right. You know, so I think that's what we do with our films is just sort of like give you the empirical evidence that exists so you can reframe in your mind what you're willing to accept as good and quality, and allow, and you know, God knows we all have so much stuff in front of us every day. Give us permission, allow us permission to reject the things that just don't do well for our spirits.
Yeah, I think all of that is so true. I mean, there is so much content, there is so much that comes at you every day, and trying to curate that in a way to have yourself feel good about yourself every day with all the other politics and craziness that's going on in the world, that being able to have spaces, and arts and culture spaces, you know, to be able to, you know, reimagine yourself in, you know, in a safe space, I think is really important. And I think that film does that. You know, you can get lost in that and find, you know, different stories and different information about you. Teaching in schools, right? I mean, we are in such a crossroads here. And I don't even know, I think we're out of the crossroads. We're on the other side, unfortunately. And, you know, there are going to be those teachers that are going to buck that system and say, I'm going to teach Juneteenth. It's just become a national holiday. And now I can't, now, you know, this is when everyone should know about it. Now you can't teach about it. I think there will be those who are the champions and will find that way to understand it, because they know it's important and how important it is to not erase history. So yeah.
It's just, I'm still grappling with the fact that they've just decided they're going to redefine critical race theory. Like, what they're saying critical race theory is not what critical race theory is. And they've just decided anything pertaining to race at all is now critical race theory. Anything pertaining to the truth of slavery, to the truth of oppression, to the truth of marginalized peoples of any color is now critical race theory, instead of it being, something that is relegated to law schools. It's just, it's wild.
Right. Well, that's the fear, though, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all built on fear, right? Yeah.
If we found out the truth about the whole thing, somehow we do to them what they did to us, and it's an unwarranted fear.
Yeah. And I've been thinking about Savages does such a good job at showing kind of how from the very beginning of filmmaking there was an intention, a willful intention to portray us in derogatory ways, in ways that were subservient and untrue. Peppermint Patty hates the way they portray us. And I've been thinking about how hard it has been for us to gain access to Hollywood. I read the UCLA diversity report every year, and people of color accounted for the majority of opening weekend domestic ticket sales for 6 of the top 10 films in 2020, and half of the tickets for the 7th top 10 film, but only two and a half of the 10 film directors were people of color. So it's important that we have a Lisa Simmons. It's important that we have a Mike D out here making independent films, out here creating space for independent films and creating access and resources for people to pick up cameras, to shoot with their phones, to learn new mediums and new ways to take agency, and tell our stories on film. I know I keep going back to this, but Lisa, you've been doing it. I mean, it's the 24th year. That is just phenomenal.
And because it needs to be done, right? It's like if you see a hole, fill it. And we giggle every year, and my sister now has come on as the co-director, which is kind of fun. But we giggle about every year about saying, oh, we're not going to do this. And then we get the films in, and then it's just like, oh my God. And then it's like, okay, now how are we going to get this down from 100 and from 200 to 80? Okay, can we get 60? I mean, it's a labor of love, because where else are you going to see these stories? Which is why we're always saying, go to film festivals, talk to filmmakers, figure it out. And you're right. It all starts with the written word. Absolutely. It starts with the written word. And I'm just so glad that people have so many more stories in them to tell, and that they're being seen.
Yeah, no, I'm grateful that there are places like Roxbury for us to share work, for that very reason. So much of what, I mean, it's like a tree. So many. I don't know, Lisa, if you made a list of how many people have come through Roxbury who are out there doing the thing now,
A lot. Matthew Cherry, like a lot of folks who had come through on their first films, maybe even their second.
Yeah, so you need that farm system. You need that farm system and all the people are getting opportunities now. They were standing by, knocking at that door for years. Trust me. I mean, if you look at Black film now, I mean, we were chronicling, interviewing these people, Pete Chapman and Ava DuVernay, long before the door was open to them in Hollywood, and I just can't wait to see what's next. I know but I want them to be inspired and influenced by my work at this point, now that I'm sort of the elder in the clan. I want them to realize, okay, well, it just doesn't come from you. There's Holly Garima, there's Ivan Dixon, there's Billy D. Williams, there's so many people.
Collins, there's Charles Burnett.
Charles Burnett.
No, I'm glad you're naming names, because that's where I was gonna go next. Eddie Glaude, you guys have Eddie Glaude talking about how freedom is a practice, not a destination, and how we need more vision dreamers, and you two are vision dreamers. And I know Charles has kind of a pessimistic outlook on the film industry and what's possible. But I would love for you two to name some of the other vision dreamers in film who are making a difference, who are creating change. I know we've lifted Ava and Donald, but like, who are some of the others that are that you see as vision dreamers in the industry?
Let's talk about my friends. Numa Perrier. She just made a deal with John Legend's company, and she just got nominated for a Black Reel Award. I would say look at this year's Black Reel Awards. You see all the people that were hustling 10 years ago, and now they're doing mainstream work in television. Pete Chapman, Matthew Cherry all got nominated. The woman who won Sundance this past year, I can't think of her name right now. About the I can see her face.
For Honk?
You got me. About the maid, she won the jury prize at Sundance. I mean, there's so many.
Yes, yep.
I mean, these are the youngins, and then the people that are holding the lantern. It would be somebody like Monkey Paw, Jordan Peele. He's created a monolith over there, and what we didn't have 15 years ago were production companies that were viable. Like, you had lots of people that had production companies, but they didn't have deals. So now what's great, a young person, they don't have to go to film school now. If they just make a solid piece of work, they can get a meeting and be in the pipeline to make more work, and without having to tread the independent waters as long. Bobby Huntley is somebody, I don't know if you showed his work, but he's so prolific. It's like every time I look up, he's got another film, a short or a feature. And they're quite good, and he gets it, so I mean, those would be my names of the new jacks that I really appreciate.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that, and the thing is that they're making films, like we said, that have a point. Like, if you do look at Sundance, I mean, Tanya Lee Lewis, who has been making films for a while. She did that film Aftershock about Black maternal health. I mean, such an important, incredibly important topic, right? And then Carrie Williams, who did Emergency, another really great conversation about what happens when you're in the presence of a white woman who's passed out, and you're three Black guys. It's like, it takes you on this like journey, but it's real. The journey is real, right? So we're all feeling it. So Mariama Diallo, that's who did Master, and with Regina Regina Hall. And so yeah, I mean, they're all, and that's what's really exciting is that they're up and coming. They're getting a seat at the table at Sundance, and then people are paying attention. And when they pay attention, then they're going to other festivals. They're not just maybe going to Black festivals, but they're going to other festivals. Now, this is where I think the Black critics come in play, where you need the Black critic to make sure that those messages that they're telling in their films are coming across, right? Adama Ebo did a great film, Honk If You Love Jesus, again with Regina Hall, just beautiful, but really about the Black church. So we don't want that to get lost. We need people to be able to, write their reviews of those, and so that people understand. But, for me, it was Charles Burnett and Kathy Collins and Haile Garima, and that's who I learned about all in school. And, they were the LA school. They didn't hold no bars. They were like, we're going to go out and make our movies. We don't care if we're not making a bazillion dollars. We need to tell these stories. And they were incredible storytellers, and we can't lose sight of them. They need her, Henry Hampton. Henry Hampton here in Boston, and we give out the Henry Hampton Award. All right, Mike.
I'm a proud recipient.
And it's powerful to keep those names in our mouths so that people, the next generations coming up, understand who these people are or who these people were, because they really have set the stage for Black storytelling, in film, and there's just no denying that.
We have, I always like to make space for naming and for lifting names, because I think it is incredibly powerful. We're getting down to our last few minutes. We have pretty much the same question several times. So from different people, which is why I know it's an important question. Several of our viewers, thank you for being with us today, would like to know, is there a place where they can find a list of the films that were excerpted in Savages, Servants, and Specialty Acts?
Oh, well, if you replay it, we have we have them mentioned at the top, but I guess I could make a glossary. That's
And then one of our viewers, Thea, also would like to know specifically what was the film shown at the end where they were talking about the black eye surgeons.
right. That's a movie called Slaves, starring Dionne Warwick.
So those were our questions.
1969.
And I'll have you, everybody, the Globe always sends out an email recapping the conversation. The conversation's recorded. And then if there is a glossary or the film title starring Dionne Warwick, we can get that all put in that email so everyone can revisit the conversation and get the questions and answers that they need. I always, Lisa's done this with me before, so she knows. I always like to ground the conversation in asking about what your beautiful resistance is. I have a series centering Black joy and Black dreams. It's called A Beautiful Resistance. And I always like to ask people what makes their life a beautiful resistance. Sometimes artists and makers like to remix it because, you know, we love remixing a thing to what makes their work a beautiful resistance. But I would love to have each of you in this conversation with what makes your life or work a beautiful resistance.
My whole thing, I just love to share, it's just, when I speak from my heart, it's sharing comes out. And being born with this, not only the skin tone, but the genetics, the DNA, connects me to so many people when I open my heart, and it feels good. It feels good to take what I know and put it together with some other things that other people know, and be able to use my gifts to make film, to tell stories. I wouldn't have picked another life. I'm very grateful for everything that's come my way, and the doors that have opened for me, and the people I've had the pleasure of meeting and documenting. And I feel that that's my role and responsibility on this earth. I don't know if that answers your question, but that's how I'm feeling right now when you ask that question.
Yeah, we are
It's
so
a beautiful resistance if I ever heard one.
right. I know we are so grateful for your beautiful resistance. I mean, now given the time, we're in Rock's film, starts on Thursday, and for me, it's just hearing. I get to watch every single film that comes in for Rock's film, and just being able to, take in these new stories. I'm constantly learning. And that is what's really exciting, and learning from these filmmakers. I'm constantly, just blessed with being able to, as Mike says, do what I do what we do, the team does, to bring these stories forward. And it is so wonderful to have an audience member come out of a theater saying, I had no idea, or I was so moved by that, or thank you for bringing that story to Boston. And so for me, every day it's supporting artists. It's helping to get their work seen by wider audiences so that they can grow. And I think that is what brings me joy. And yeah, it really makes me happy.
Thank you guys so much. Please, please, please tune in to the Roxbury Film Festival. It's going to be going on at the MFA. It's going to be streaming. It's roxfilmfest.com. Mike D will be there with a new film. Also, Lisa Simmons will be on Black News Hour Friday at 8 a.m. So you can find us at the Globe website. And as always, we are so excited to be in community with you and lifting conversations like this. Thank you. Be in your joy. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Janae. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Janae. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you.